Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Closer Encounters. I am your host Clarence Mitchell. We're coming to you live from somewhere in Minnesota. Closer Encounters is broadcasting live from Spreaker, and we are always live streaming on Facebook. Come check us out, www.facebook.com/Closer Encounters Radio. And please don't forget to like, follow, and share. Would you like to be a guest on Closer Encounters? Or do you know somebody who would like to be a guest on Closer Encounters? Please send us an email, closerencounters.info@gmail.com. That's closerencounters.info@gmail.com. For everything Closer Encounters, check out our new webpage at www.closerencounters.space. Alrighty, well welcome everybody and hello, good morning, however you want to say it, to Closer Encounters Radio. We're doing a live show this morning with a really good friend of mine, as you all know, and we've done many shows together with Omar IAmone from Watchers Talk. It's really great to have him with us here today. Well, Omar did a video, I told you about it here a couple episodes ago, and I hope you guys actually got the chance to watch it, where he talks about the Annunaki and the gold and all this stuff. And he's with us this morning, and we're going to have a discussion about all of this, and we're going to take you on a little different twist here today, and hopefully everybody is, you know, in tune and will understand what's happening and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, and you guys will totally understand what's being said here once we get going here. But I want to welcome Omar this morning. I'm going to take my camera because I have him here live on Messenger. So we're going to switch our camera around, and we are going to put him up here so everybody can see him. And let's hope this works out right. Let's see if I can get this set up here. Whoop, there we go. I just crashed it. That's the story of my life, brother. Oh, let's see if we can get you faced up here. I may have to turn this around a little bit so it's facing better. Okay. And if I get it to sit still, we'll be good.
The challenges, eh, Clarence?
Oh, I'm telling you, it never fails. Yeah, crazy. And there we are. Okay. Get you centered up here just a little bit. Awesome. Okay, my friend, how are you?
I am doing wonderful, Clarence. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Oh, anytime.
Like you said, we haven't done a talk, just you and I, in a couple of months now. Not that it was by design, but it's just unfortunate events that happen in life.
Yes.
That take little weird twists and turns. But we're dedicated, and we're here to really spread the truth and try to debunk the disinformation and the misinformation and the misconceptions that people have. Mm-hmm. And really that's going to be the topic for today. So I appreciate you giving me a time on your platform.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now that video you did, I tell you, that was really interesting, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. I really did. And of course, you know, I made a few comments
Thanks, buddy.
on it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was really awesome. And I've been saying this for years and years, and to get people to really understand what's happening. And I'm glad we're both on board. This is why we connect so well. I know that for a fact, you know. And good minds think alike, you know. It's funny. But
absolutely.
Yeah. But go ahead and explain to people what your video was about, and we can get into the whole concept, you know, about what was going on.
Well, it's about a 20-minute video on my channel on YouTube, Watchers Talk, and essentially in the video, what I'm talking about is I go way back in time, prior to essentially billions of years, because people think that the star that we have today is the first generation star, when in actual reality, it's not a first generation star, it's more likely a second generation star. And I go on and I discuss on how the Annunaki traveled across the solar system to the inner planets, to Earth, to come and mine gold. And of course, along the way, they created bases and such on Mars and on our moon. And then, of course, the genetic engineering of human beings here on this planet. Supposedly, they created us as a slave species to mine their gold for them. And I cold-heartedly disagree with that, because the facts just, they don't line up. It holds no water, as far as I see it. And really, that's the logistics of my video. The thing that I'm pointing out in my video with the sun is that gold and carbon, which you and I and everything else that's living here on this planet, can only have come from a supernova. Now, the last sun, the first sun that we had here in our, where we are, it was made of hydrogen and helium. Now, when those two, cooked and cooked and cooked, they created heavier and heavier elements. And once it got down to iron, because it was so heavy, the sun went supernova. And it's in that supernova, Clarence, that carbon and elements like gold are forged. And there's no other source for gold here in our solar system aside from that. Now, when our sun went supernova, if people are familiar with the work of Nassim Haramein, they'll understand that where our sun is, there is a singularity there. It's a black hole, very powerful gravitational force. So the last time when our sun went supernova, it can only go so far, kind of like when you blow up a balloon, you can only fill it up so much before it will, blow up on you, right?
Right, right.
So when that happened, the debris, it went out like that, right, into the solar system, and it's caught in the gravitational force of the singularity where our sun used to be, the first generation sun. Now, everything that exploded out is what's called the Oort cloud. And the Oort cloud is massive. It's about 3.25 light years across. And it consists of, debris, elements, ice, rock, whatever that we have here in the inner solar system is also in the outer solar system. There's the Kuiper belt, which is another asteroid belt, and then we have the Oort cloud. Now, according to Sitchonites, that Nibiru is on a 3,600-year orbit. So I did my math and put together an orbit of Nibiru. Now, from what I understand, Nibiru would be in the neighborhood of Sedna or Edna, way past Pluto, and it would be in the range of the outer Kuiper belt.
Right.
Now, if we have, there's gold out there, and there's gold here, and there's gold in the Oort cloud. Now, the point that I was making was that a couple of years ago, NASA, with our very limited technology, had discovered an asteroid called Psyche 16, 16 Psyche, and it has more gold, iron, copper, nickel, platinum than all of the Earth combined.
Yeah, matter
now,
of fact.
With our limited.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, as a matter of fact, if anybody's been on the internet at all, even on Facebook or any of these other groups, there's been post after post after post about this giant asteroid just full of gold. Yeah.
That's right. It's called 16 Psyche, and if NASA was to tow that thing back to Earth, the iron in the asteroid alone would be worth about $10 quadrillion.
Wow.
So the precious metals market would just simply collapse. So gold would be worth nothing. Now, people think that gold is rare, but it's not really all that rare because it was created in a supernova. Now, if with our limited technology, if we can, take a peek in the inner solar system and find an asteroid that has that much gold in it, then for me, it makes sense that the source of this gold is the same from the ancient supernova. So if there's gold in the inner asteroid belt, then there must be gold in the outer asteroid belt, which is the Kuiper belt, and then even more gold in the Oort cloud in itself. Now, if the Anunnaki, if they were on a 3,600-year orbit, they would be somewhere near the orbit of the Kuiper belt. So why waste the time of traveling into the inner solar system, building pyramids, building way stations on Mars, creating way stations on the moon, and then to come to the Earth to begin mining gold, but not just mining gold. These guys are coming here to mine gold with pickaxes, wheelbarrows, and pans, like the Klondike rush of the 1800s.
Right.
I don't see any massive machinery that these guys had brought with them. Like we were saying earlier before the show started, when we are mining for gold today, we're using some pretty super heavy-duty machinery.
Absolutely.
To employ to get that gold out. Then these guys came here with nothing, and these guys wanted to, just mine the gold on their own. You had the Anunnaki worker working in the caves, in the mines in South Africa. If that ever happened, I say that the mines in South Africa are far more older than the Anunnaki. I would say a couple of 100 million years from the previous civilization that lived here. More than likely mined the gold, like the Atlanteans may have mined that gold.
Sure.
Not the Anunnaki. But anyhow, these guys come here and they're working in the mines, and when they could have brought machinery or manufactured machinery here. Now, these guys are so advanced that they can, create people.
Right.
Right? Like you and I, they can create us. So it wouldn't really be all that difficult for these guys to manufacture machinery to extract the gold that they need, right? But they don't do that. They decide that they're going to create people, right? People are going to cause problems for them, as we know. They want to destroy us, right? And people are always problems. So they create us, and now the thing that they're not telling us in that is that once they created, the first female hominoid, because it would have to be a female, not a male, because we need the eggs, we need the womb.
Right.
So the female would have to be genetically engineered, or the fetus in it would have to be genetically engineered. But you can't stop there, because then you would need a female, a male. Then you would need at least, Clarence, 16 to 24 sets of couples. Then you have to wait for them to get older. Then you got to breed them. Then you have to wait for their children to grow up, and then them to have kids, and then their children to grow up, and so on and so on and so on.
Right.
So it would take like 300, 400, 500 years to actually make a viable workforce that's going to be effective enough for you to extract the gold out of the mines.
Right.
Now these guys are making it sound like that their planet is going to die and they need gold immediately, right? They need it right now.
Right.
So if they need it right fucking now, then why did they not go out into the Kuiper Belt, use their technology, find a chunk of asteroid that's loaded with gold, tow it back to their home planet, whatever it's called. I don't think it's called Nibiru, but whatever it's called, take it back there and apply the gold to your atmosphere to fix it. But these guys didn't do that. They took their sweet ass time, and it was almost like this, it wasn't important enough for them. Because really, Clarence, if you were ordained with a task to save the Earth and the Earth was dying, would you go all the way out to Pluto, build pyramids on Pluto, go to its moon, build pyramids on there, fashion a worker race to mine gold for you, or would you go to the nearest source, find the gold, bring it back to save the world?
Absolutely, especially if it's in that
I
kind
think
of
I would go to the
yeah, absolutely. Closer the better, and the more the better. I mean, that's, yeah, absolutely. And being that we know now that these asteroids are out there that are just nothing but gold, in a sense, it would make a whole lot more sense. Absolutely. Now, let me ask you something, Omar, just out of, just so people who are watching and listening in and stuff get the understanding. How does gold actually work in the atmosphere? I mean, what would it really do? Why would you need it?
Well, gold is a great reflector. It's going to reflect the gamma rays and the radiation from the sun. So from what it sounds like, their planet had the same type of issue that our planet has, like the ozone hole, right? Remember back in the 80s, they were saying that, if you use too much hairspray and shit like that, you're going to create the ozone hole. It's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. Now,
if these guys were technologically advanced, or if we were technologically advanced, then what we could do is we could shave gold down into dust and then begin applying it kind of like mortar, right, around the areas that are infected, or the areas that have a hole in the atmosphere. So they would use the gold as a mortar and just place it so when the sunlight is coming, the sunlight would reflect off of the gold, and it would allow the planet to repair itself, because the planet will always repair itself. It's not like it's doomed and it's finished. It's kind of like our ozone hole. Our ozone hole was huge in the 1980s, and in the 90s it began getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and then today our ozone hole is almost not there. It's next to none. It's still a little bit there, but it wasn't like massive like it was back in the 80s.
Right.
So for me, what I suggest is that they were using gold as mortar to patch the atmosphere of their planet, because more than likely you had beta rays and gamma rays coming into the planet, which was destroying life, and they needed to address that issue awful fast before everyone died, right? But the weird thing is that these guys, like I said earlier, they were not in a hurry. So if you need to patch up the ozone holes on your planet, you're not going to, go on this epic run as they did of creating people and building pyramids and, and not to mention, Clarence, their technology. And I've said this to Leonard O'Neill on Orion Rising before as well, because when you read the texts And ancient texts, when we read the Holy Bible, the Holy Quran, the Popol Vuh, things like that, when we read them, the technology in it is being described as something similar to what we have today. Like Elon Musk's Heavy Falcon, they're fossil fuel based or they're ion gas based.
Right.
They can't travel really fast. Right. So the example that I use is that we sent out Voyager back in the 1970s, and it's just now reaching about the orbit of where Nibiru would be, and that's taken us 40 plus years.
Exactly.
These guys have the same type of technology we do, because what we see it in the text that when these guys land, there is thunder, there's fire, there's smoke.
Rocket.
And then when these guys take off, there's thunder, there's fire, and there's smoke. So they're using fossil fuel-based rockets.
Right.
Now, if they're using fossil fuel-based rockets, or even if they're using ion-based rockets, like the return trip is 80 years, Clarence.
Yes.
40 years to get to Nibiru, and then 40 years to get back. Right? Now, who's going to sit in a spacecraft for 40 years? Let's say if their technology is even 2 or 3 times advanced than ours is currently, that would still be like a 15 to 20 year round trip back and forth.
Right.
These guys are not flying around in the UFOs that we're seeing in the skies today, because the ones that we're seeing in the skies today, they could be hovering over your house. You'd never know it.
Exactly.
Right? These guys travel at unimaginable speeds. The G-forces in it are just immense. It's like my brother and I were talking about this last night, and it's kind of like sitting in a bubble. These UFOs are sitting in a bubble, an air bubble, and they can move around, and the G-forces don't affect them.
Right.
Like now, the craft that we're seeing in the ancient text is clearly describing rockets. Elon Musk's Heavy Falcon, Werner von Braun's V2 rocket, things like that is what we're seeing in the text. There's nothing advanced technology that's being employed by the Anunnaki. Now, if anything, and I've said this before, that if anything, the Anunnaki, more than likely, it's not even Anunnaki, like we were saying, it's Anu and Enki.
Right.
When they came here, I'm suggesting that they came from Mars. At some given time, there was 2 or possibly even 3 habitable planets in the Goldilocks zone. We have Earth, then we have Mars, and then we have the destroyed planet. Now, whether that was a natural asteroid belt or whether it's Tiamat that was destroyed. And the people from there moved to Earth, and Ra talks about that, the Sasquatch and the Yeti, they've come from Tiamat, they're from there, they came here once their planet was destroyed. So we're not really quite sure whether Tiamat was is actually that asteroid field is Tiamat, or whether it's just a natural
leftovers
phenomena, a planet that just didn't form. We just don't know that.
Right.
So there may have been possibly 3 habitable planets in the Goldilocks zone. But for now, let's just say there's 2, the Earth and Mars, because we know that Mars was habitable just not that very long ago. We have evidence of nuclear warfare on Mars. There's 2 massive explosions on the northern hemisphere of the planet, and I forgot the compound that's in the air, but that compound can only have come from nuclear explosions, kind of like trinitite, right? You can't get trinitite any other way except if you blow up a nuclear bomb, and then you get that green trinitite type of rock, right? So what I'm thinking is that the Anunnaki are Martians. They were from Mars, and they came to Earth as like cultural ties. Maybe the Earth was advanced at that time as well, which I believe it was. Humans were here, and we were quite smart back in those days. And the Martians or the Anunnaki came to the Earth, and we had cultural ties with these guys.
Sure. Now,
this wasn't, just 400,000 years ago. We're talking like millions of years ago. We're talking like in the timeline of Rama, of Dwarka, and, Krishna, the wars that they discuss in the Mahabharata. I'm suggesting that the Anunnaki may have been involved in something like that, and that's why their planet was destroyed. And these elongated skulls that we're finding in Peru and other places around the world, I think that those are the Anunnaki, because if we go to Mars with the lower gravitational field of Mars, people are going to grow taller. They're going to have an elongated cranium. Their eyes will be bigger because of the less light,
right?
And they will look somewhat like humans, but they would be different. And now
Sure.
when we look around on our planet, we find very, very, very few elongated craniums. And for me, I'm suggesting the reason why is that those individuals got trapped here on Earth when that war was happening, now possibly between Earth and Mars, or Earth and Mars combined and they were fighting somebody else,
Right.
where that asteroid field is today.
Right.
So for me to, believe the fact that, they traveled in rockets 450,000 years ago across our solar system to come here to mine gold, to me, that's just malarkey. It holds no water, and it's misinformation, and it's created this way to misguide us so that we are not aware of the actual truth of our ancient past.
Right.
Now, you got to remember, Sitchin was a Jesuit, and he also worked very closely with the Rockefellers, and his office was at the Rockefeller Tower in New York. So, for this guy to go out and, translate the ancient text and then come out and give us the truth, it doesn't go with the system as we understand it.
Right.
When we write a book and we try to go and we try to get it published, right? If they don't like something in the book, they want you to remove that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They'll edit your book for you, and they'll take out what they don't want, and what they want the public to know, they'll release that. Now, the same thing is happening with the 12th Planet, these chronicles of books that he wrote. It's all misinformation. There may be some truth to it, but I'm thinking that like 80% of it is misinformation, because these guys are not in the business of telling us the truth, Clarence.
That's the truth. Yeah.
If they told us
That's
the truth, then
yeah.
we would know the truth about everything.
Yeah.
Right? So why
Right.
should we expect the fact that, Sitchin is telling the truth and the publishers allowed this truth to come out? It makes no sense to me, brother.
Well,
it just absolutely makes no sense.
Yeah, not only that,
and
but
if the Anunnaki...
yeah, well, I was just going to say, not only that, but you're talking about one man and his interpretation, where Mesopotamia and Bolivia and all that have many, many, many scholars over the years that have interpreted these, and they do not vary very much, if you know what I'm saying. Everybody so far from different cultures and whatever that has interpreted these pretty much are all the same. I mean, they're accurate. And if you read them, you'll see that there are so many things different compared to what he come up with. So you're talking one guy out of all of these other scholars who, by which are actual scholars. They're not, like he was. He's a self-proclaimed person. You know what I'm saying? He didn't have anything behind him. To do this. So, I mean, so, yeah. And I've said this for many years, Yeah.
Yeah, for me, being a self-proclaimed scholar, or, you're an accredited scholar, to me, that really makes no matter.
Yeah,
right?
right.
Whether, you're a scholar or not, because I can always look at an example to, like, Giorgio Tsoukalos. Right? Giorgio Tsoukalos is, he's, what does he do? He's like involved in like physical education.
Right.
Is his degree, but yet he's still a scholar when it comes to ancient studies and ancient history.
Right.
He understands it and he speaks it quite well. Right. So, for me, whether the guy's a scholar or not, really, it makes no matter to me whether he is or not. What matters to me is that the information that he's put out, and people have picked up that information as the truth.
Right.
Right? Like, for instance, all of a sudden, this planet Nibiru somehow became a planet in this whole story, when we know that Nibiru, the planet Nibiru, was a theory created by Nancy Leiter back in 1995.
Right.
And it failed numerous times, where she had said, "Oh, planet or Nibiru is coming. It's going to be here soon. Kill your pets, and kind of like Heaven's Gate, and they'll take you away."
Right.
It didn't happen. Serious shit, man. You can look on the internet where she was literally asking people to go and put their pets down because tomorrow Planet X was coming and they were going home.
Right.
So when that didn't pan out, she made another prediction. That didn't pan out. Made another prediction. Didn't pan out. Made another prediction. Didn't pan out. Another one. It's kind of like the rapture.
Right.
We've seen the rapture come up 7,000 times since the 1900s. and this rapture just never happens. And it's the same thing that's happening with this Nibiru.
Right.
Now, people think that Nibiru is a planet, when Nibiru is not a planet. More than likely, Nibiru is a city, as we were talking earlier.
Right.
Or it may even be a spacecraft that they were using, and they called it Nibiru. Like we watch Star Trek, and we have the USS Enterprise, USS Voyager, and shit like that, right?
Right.
So it could be that Nibiru was either a spacecraft, or it could have been a city here on Earth where these guys gathered and took care of their business.
Mm-hmm.
But people just grab this information and they just run with it. And for me, it goes back to the old Darwinian agenda of, we're created as a slave species. We use 10% of our brain, 90% of our DNA is junk, and we're nothing more than just slaves. And Zecharia Sitchin's story reintegrates that again and again and again, and it's almost like the basis of his story. Mm-hmm. That we used to be chimps and we used to be apes, and aliens came along and they used the DNA and made us into what we are today. Well, I'm sorry, you can't do that. I don't care how advanced a civilization is. You're not going to come and you're not going to create a living thing and then put consciousness into them, like you and I have. What they would have created would have been, automatons, drones, autonomous. They would have, just like robots. They would have taken direction and just gone and done what they did, and they would have no thought of their own. But when you look at humans, we have expression, we have thought of our own, and then hence that's why, and Leo wanted to kill us, supposedly. Mm-hmm. But again, we're talking about stories that are far, far more older than what Zecharia Sitchin is claiming, that this shit happened only like a few thousand years ago.
Right.
When we look at the works of like Michael Cremo, Klaus Donna, these guys have artifacts and evidence that's showing us that humanity is at least 350, 400 million years old, 500 million years old. I mean, look at the root races.
Right.
It takes us back like 300, 400, 500 million years. So there's no way humans could have been created, just 450,000 years ago. That's just a blink of an eye in time, and you really think about it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Way too young of a timeline. Yeah, and not to mention all of the species. When you're talking Neanderthal, Denisovian, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens sapien, and so on and so forth. I mean, generations after generations after generations. It wasn't like Neanderthal showed up and then 1,000 years later Denisovians showed up. It wasn't like that. It took thousands of years for these other guys to show up, or whatever. It's just crazy stuff. Yeah, absolutely. The timelines are just way too far apart. Yeah. Yeah,
what I find really disappointing, Clarence, is that, even when you present evidence to people, like I have many a times now, and we've done many shows together, and I constantly have said that we're not slaves. We use more than 10% of our brain. Our DNA is not junk. We're infinite consciousness.
Sure.
But yet people still want to continue to believe. That's the key word. They want to continue to believe that they are a slave because the circumstances of this false reality that we live in, we're so demoralized as a species and as a people that when they're told that you're a slave and that you're retarded and you only use 10% of your brain and all your DNA is junk and you're worthless, then people want to believe that. And unfortunately, they cold-heartedly believe it. And when guys like you and I come along and Leonard come along and we present the evidence to them and saying, hey, look, you're not a slave. You use 100% of your brain.
Right.
None of your DNA is junk. You're an expression of the infinite consciousness. But yet again and again and again, I continue to see comments to where people are still continuing to force the idea of, the Anunnaki genetically engineering the human beings. It's very disappointing, and people just simply have no faith in their own humanity and in their own species and in themselves. And I can't really blame them, because take a look around, man.
Yeah.
The 8-hour repetitious circle that we're in, wake up in the morning, have a little breakfast, transit to work, go to work, eat a sandwich, transit home, watch a little bit of television, go to sleep, wake up, do it all over again. Holy
Day
shit,
after
man,
day.
we are
Right.
a lot more than just this 8 hour of repetitious cycle. What are we doing? We're infinite consciousness, my brother. We're
Yeah.
the expression of all. We're God, and here we are, being treated like the way we are, being constantly told that, we're slaves. You're a slave, you're a slave, you're a slave, you're a slave.
Yeah.
Even intelligent guys like Michael Tallinger, I've written books on the slave species of the gods.
Right.
I have no issues with Michael Tallinger. I have huge respects for him. But again, that Darwinian agenda, it just continues to rear its face again and again
right.
and again and again.
Yeah, people can't get away from it because it's always shoved in your face, And that's just it,
right.
It's just like horses or any other animal that you train, or like a dog or anything else. Once you train it and it becomes that thing that you train, that's it, until somebody else takes it aside and retrains it or tries to give it a different type of training. Does it ever change its habits, or whatever? And that's basically the way we have to look at ourselves. We are conformed, we're trained by whomever, schools for one thing was a bad deal, and your upbringing, different other things like that, and then you got to work for the man. So you're trained. I mean, you're always constantly being trained, and it isn't until you step outside of that, it isn't until you step outside of that you realize, hey, there's something more to this. There's got to be,
Yeah, exactly. It's like I said, it's from cradle to grave. You're told that you have to make money, you have to work, you're born to work, you have to conform to a god, you have to pray, you have to do this, you have to do that.
Right.
It's reintegrated into your life, every single day, and then you get run through the old sausage factory, the school, and then that's where they train you, and then they send you to another place, and then you get trained there, and then you go to the secondary education, and that's a representation of the system, and then you get run through there, and then when you come out on the other end, you're socially conformed at the same level as everyone else is,
right?
So that not one person is brighter than the other, so that you can't ask questions. So when you keep the education at an equal educated level, then everyone will be the same. Everyone will conform because they all run through the same old sausage factory.
Right.
It's a shame. It really is.
Yeah. No,
it's
absolutely
really
right.
It's a shame, Clarence, that a book,
one book,
a chronicle of books can really change people's perception of who and what they are.
But look at what we're talking about here, and I, I am one of those people. You are one of those people. We all did this in one form or another, where it's the norm. I mean, that's we didn't know any better. It wasn't until we got that conscious wake up that we stopped and stepped back and said, "Whoa, wait a minute, there is something wrong here." Did we actually start researching, and we went backwards, so to speak, and we found out that, hey, this is not what it seems to be, and that's where we are now. I mean, that's really how it works, and thank God we did it.
Clarence, if you're born in a nut house, right? If you're born in a nut house and you're raised in a nut house, to you that's normal. Right? Now, if somebody comes from the outside that wasn't born and raised in a nut house and comes into a nut house and takes a look around and says, "Holy fuck, this place is crazy. Everybody's just nuts here.
Right.
This is not normal."
Right.
But for the person that's born in the nut house,
it's normal.
That is normal.
Exactly.
Right? So normal is your daily routine. It's your repetitious of what you would call normal. When people say, "Oh, that's a normal person," it's like, well, what is a normal person? Is a normal person that wakes up and goes to work for 8 hours a day, slaves, comes home, pays their mortgage, misses one payment on their mortgage, and they get their house taken from them.
Right.
I met a woman yesterday, and we got talking, and then I started talking to her about my book, Earth Frequency, and the banking cartel. And then she's like, "You know what, Omar?" She's like, "I worked hard and I bought a house and I paid for it for 12 years, and I lost my job, and I couldn't make one or two payments, and they came along, they changed the locks on my door, and they kicked me out of my house.
Yeah.
And she paid for that house for 12 years, and they took it underneath her. Right? Is that normal?
Yeah.
Right? It's, if that's a normal person, so is that a normal thing that happens to people? I would say no. I think this is a corrupt system. It's a system that's meant to lower our vibrational frequency, our distortion, so that we vibrate at a dense level, and then when we're vibrating at a dense level, the beings that we share the planet with that live and exist beyond our visual perceptual range,
Sure,
that are phased out are the ones that are feeding off of us. They're rearing us for food, just as we do chickens in coops. They're doing the same thing to us. And I would suggest that this all has to do with the information field, the broadcast field of Saturn, and everything that's happening here on the planet for the last several thousand years has been the effect of the Saturn information field that we're being affected by. And all this slave, being a slave and us being created, it's all part of that agenda to keep us in this lower, low vibratory state that we find ourselves in. Including myself. It takes a lot of positive thought and light work and love to raise one's vibrational frequency, and then once that vibrational frequency is raised, then everything begins to make sense. It's almost like you begin to see flashes and images from the universal records, from the Akashic records, and that information begins to download. Right? But that can't happen if you're distorting at a dense level. Right? Now, once you understand and identify that problem, that you are being forced to distort at a lower level, then you can begin to change your habits. Then you can begin to change the way you look at things and how you view people and the thought process in your own head. Then then only then can your vibrational frequency begin to rise, and then you can become healthy again. Right? Because right now we're unhealthy. All our chakras are damaged. The food that we eat is garbage. The air we breathe is garbage. The water we drink is garbage. So everything is connected, Clarence, including this whole Annunaki thing, because it's just simply not true. It holds no water. I've said it for a very, very long time, that there's no possible way they could come down here, genetically created us, to slave the gold for them. If anything, Clarence, if anything, I think what would have happened is that if the Anunnaki, the Martians, came to Earth, we know that Mars' atmosphere is very, very thin right now, and it could have been a little bit thicker in history in the past, and it just really dwindled away. So I think if anything, if the Martians or the Anunnaki came to Earth, we would have assisted them in mining gold. And we would have helped them in trying to repair their planet, rather than them creating us and then forcing us to help them. To me, it's the opposite of what's actually being told to us. When they tell you to panic, don't panic, because there's nothing happening. They want you to panic. So when these guys say this is the truth, then you got to say to yourself, no, this can't be the truth, because you guys are not in the truth-giving business. So there's something awry here, and I have to look deeper into this, right? And you have to question this so-called authority, because this so-called authority has lied to us again and again and again and again, right? So when somebody lies to you over and over again, why would you believe that person again?
Right. Well, now we're on this subject. Let me ask you something, Omar. Where do you think the human race actually came from, as far as creation-wise?
I think that humanity began in the Sirius star system, and as the Dogon talk, and then from there, I think that humanity migrated and colonized the Pleiades star system, and then from the Pleiades star system, we came here to this solar system, and colonize Earth and possibly even Mars in antiquity. And I'm willing to bet that there are other human colonies out there in other star systems that we're just simply not aware of at this particular moment.
Right.
And probably in the future, once we get more information and we open our minds up a bit more to the information field, maybe we'll begin to realize that humanity is not by itself. In fact, that humanity has colonies all over the universe, all over this galaxy.
Sure.
And, you know, we are a very, very special, you know, people. Right? We just simply have to look back into antiquity, Clarence, to when they were talking about the Tower of Babel. Now, in the Tower of Babel, they talk about humanity at one time spoke the same language.
Right.
Now, again, that is a metaphor that these guys are talking about, because when we look at the culture, our culture, the diverse human culture that we have thousands of languages, hundreds of thousands of different cultures we have that all speak a different language.
Right.
So how can everyone speak the same common language? So they're not speaking the common language as words as you and I are speaking right now. What these guys were doing, they were into telekinesis, telepathy,
Sure.
and they were using their own body's electromagnetic field and interacting with the Earth's electromagnetic field.
Right.
And then in thus they were able to communicate with one another regardless of the distance that was involved on the planet. It's like making a conscious phone call from one person to another and sharing our thoughts. And then when that was severed, what that severed means is that an outside force came in and hacked into this frequency and cut our collective consciousness up. So we went from being the whole as the one
Right.
into becoming individuals that serve themselves rather than to serve the whole.
Right.
And then that's where I'm talking about the Saturn information broadband field. It's affecting us because we are part of the one, the whole, as Ra has spoken.
Right.
But we went from service to the whole, as we did prior to the Tower of Babel, to now to the service of self, going to war, killing the expression of yourself, of the infinite consciousness, to gain a little bit of wealth or property or material. You know, those are not the actions of human beings.
Right.
Right now, we are under control and we're being forced to do this stuff. So humanity is a very, very special, powerful species. It's just unfortunate that right now we are trapped in this rut, I
Right.
guess it would be, because
Right.
compared to millions of years, humans being around, and the last 10, 12,000 years that we've been the way we are, you know, almost savage, you know, no empathy, no love,
Right.
no feeling towards another individual or
Getting
an
less and
animal
less.
or
Yeah.
trees. Yeah, exactly. Where
Yep.
you know our what's that called? Our virtue,
Right.
right, compared to our deeds is like very, very low. Our virtue is like down here, you know, or our deeds are down here and our virtue is like up here. It just doesn't balance.
Right.
When back in the day our virtue was very high and the deeds that we did didn't harm or hurt anything or anyone.
See, and that's
including plants
and that's a good
animals.
point. And that's a really good point when you bring that up, because if you really stop and consider, all right, think back, the Mayans, all the Indian tribes that we've had, you know, generations ago, Egypt, different ones like that, they all worked as a unit. It wasn't, I mean, yeah, they had pharaohs and they had kings and they had whatever, but the group of people itself was a colony. They worked as a whole. It wasn't about individuality. Yeah. And when that group worked together, they got everything done that needed to be, and they loved one another. They worked alongside one another. I mean, it's just, it was a family. The whole
That's
thing,
right.
you know. We don't have that anymore, you know.
No,
Yeah.
we don't. Their bellies were full. They had shelter over their head, and they had clothes to wear. They loved one another. They respected one another.
Right.
And they weren't in the business of killing one another.
No.
And, you know, that is a service to the whole. And like you said, we've lost that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only time really, Clarence, that we come together is when there's a massive disaster,
Right.
like 9/11,
Yep.
or the California fires last year, and even then, really, nobody really showed up. But the point is that the only time we really come together and we put differences aside is when there is a massive disaster that affects us and emotionally affects everyone on the planet, and only then do we step up and show the real human inside of us that we truly are. But the rest of the time, we're autonomous because we're motivated by money. This paper money, which is not even real.
No.
We're motivated by this when we could live in small communities, like I'm here in this little town called Chase, where my brother lives, Pritchard, where my brother lives, and it's just a small little town, right? Probably maybe 1,000 people at most.
Right.
Now, instead of everybody, working 8, 9, 10 hours a day and trying to acquire possessions for themselves, when this whole community can come together, right? When this whole community can come together once a week, put in 8 hours of work, right? That's 8,000 hours of labor in 1 week.
Right. Yeah.
A corporation out there couldn't ask for anything better, right? And then everybody would be provided for. It's Ubuntu that I'm talking about.
Sure.
Right? But again, we're corrupted, and our thinking is that, it's for me and for myself only. I'm out for myself. Nobody's got my back, and I'm going to step over whoever I can to get whatever I can get. And he who has the most at the end wins is the mentality that the people are living with. And this goes back to, again, to the system that is projecting what it wants onto us, and we're expressing that want for the system by showing that we are greedy and we're in for ourselves, and it's only for the one, because when we serve the one, our distortion and our vibrational frequency becomes lower. Right. Because you're serving yourself. You're not meant to serve yourself. We're a hive mind where, you're to serve the whole.
And we've been here, let's see, 11, just over a couple hours, so that's not bad. Yeah, we did good. Yeah. Did real good. Yeah. So
flew by pretty fast.
Yeah, you sure did. Awesome job. Awesome stuff. So, everybody.
Right on, brother. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody that's been watching and listening and whatever, please share this, pass it along. If you belong to a different group or, other groups and whatever, by all means, once we get off the air, this will download to the Closer Encounters page, and just share it. Click on it, bring it into your group or whatever, and let people see it, and this way, the word gets out and whatever. So. But in the meantime, Godspeed to everybody. So, pretty cool.
Much love to y'all, and anyone that's watching from Canada, I don't want to say Happy Canada Day to anyone, because it's not a happy day for sure for majority of the population in our country.
Right.
The Aboriginal people were robbed, hijacked, manipulated, destroyed, genocided, murdered, raped. This today is the paramount of all the suffering of the Aboriginal people of Canada. And today they officially lost their homeland to an invader. And so if anybody that's watching that's from Canada, please give a moment of silence to the Aboriginal people. Keep them in your minds and your thoughts. When you go and participate in the festivities this evening, watching fireworks and such, and barbecues that people are having,
right?
Please keep the Aboriginal people in mind, because they're the ones who paid the greatest price for what we have today.
There you go.
And that must never be forgotten.
No, that's God's honest truth. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. And I'm going to be back on again this evening, 6 o'clock. Got some things I want to go over from last night's show and different other things. So, I hope you guys will join in. And, we'll see you later on. But in the meantime, have a great day. And we'll catch you again. Thank you very much, Omar. Been a pleasure, my friend.
You're welcome, my friend. I look forward to doing this with you again. much love to you, and thank you for this platform, and thank you for everyone that watched, commented, and shared.
Very good. Cool. I want to thank you all for listening to Closer Encounters. Please remember to like, follow, and share. And until we meet again, keep your eyes to the skies. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.